The removal of Brawl boxes was arguably the most controversial thing that had happened to the game up until that point, and that is why the Starr Drops were added, since they were like a compromise. However, over a year later, the Starr Drops are proving to actually be better than the Brawl boxes, and today we'll be going over exactly how that is, so let's get right into it. The most obvious thing to mention is that the Starr Drops actually aren't better when you compare the boxes and drops 1-to-1, as the drops tend to give way less loot. However, there are just tons more factors involved that we are going to be talking about, with the first being the rarities. Now, as you all know, the Starr Drops come in different rarities ranging from rare to legendary, and this is a big factor in what makes them interesting and better than the Brawl boxes. And I know that the boxes also did kind of come in different rarities, with there just being different types of them. However, there wasn't a randomness factor, as you knew what box you were getting, and it just didn't really feel like the rarities. Plus, when thinking about the boxes, most people just default to the mega boxes, as they were the most popular and iconic. Either way, one thing that made the Starr Drops stand out was the fact that they came in different rarities, and you wouldn't know what rarity you would get until you actually opened the drop, and even that aspect was made entertaining through the whole upgrade system. The only time it wouldn't be random would be with the drops with predetermined rarities, though we'll talk more about them specifically later in the video. The normal Starr Drops just brought a sense of excitement as well as uncertainty that the Brawl boxes just didn't, and that is what would make the drops just more satisfying to open, in my opinion, especially when you manage to upgrade to a mythic or even legendary. And the fact that you got multiple Starr Drops in a day meant that having a few bad drops wasn't as big of a deal, because you were just able to open so many and you had so many chances, which was different when compared to the boxes where you didn't get to open as many, especially if you were free to play and didn't have the Brawl Pass. And this also leads us to another topic on just how each of these things affected progression, since that is a pretty big factor to look at. One key difference between the boxes and drops is that the boxes were essential for progression, while the drops acted more like a nice to have. This is because the boxes were the main way you would get resources and unlock brawlers, and is why the boxes just gave so many different rewards in a single box. You would have other things like the trophy road that would also give you a handful of brawlers, but that definitely wasn't anything major, and the major progression would come from the Brawl boxes. This would really make people rely on the Brawl boxes, and it gave a very clear advantage for people that were willing to spend money on the game in order to buy the boxes, as they were more likely to progress faster in the game. However, when it comes to the drops, they are just seen as a nice to have where you can get additional progression and maybe even a brawler every now and again, but it definitely isn't the main progression or anything like that. The removal of the boxes added the Starr Road, and that became the main progression, especially because the Trophy Road brawlers would also be removed, so that the Trophy Road wasn't essential for progression or getting brawlers or anything. For most people, the Starr Drops are just seen as extra rewards, and that is also why we get a lot of events that give away so many Starr Drops, and that just isn't really something we saw when the boxes were around. Now, this could possibly be because Brawl Stars is just making an effort to make the players more happy by giving more free things, or it could be because they didn't want to do it with the boxes in fear of messing with the game economy. We don't know for sure, however both options are plausible, and I think it is just something to think about. But another big thing to look at is the fact that there was a big gap between when the boxes were removed and when the drops were added. In that time period, progression obviously didn't stop or really even slow down or anything, and that is just clear evidence that the Starr Drops weren't necessary for progression, as people were getting by just fine without them. I also know that the rates and stuff were changed to compensate for the addition of the drops when they did get added. However, the biggest complaint with that was with the club shop, but that isn't even a thing anymore. So overall, you can see that one massive difference between the Starr Drops and the Brawl boxes was that the boxes were required for progression, meanwhile the boxes were not. This is something that would play a massive role in making the Starr Drops better than the boxes, and that is just because of player perception. People tended to be a lot more critical of the mega boxes just because they had a bigger impact on the game, and that kind of made them less enjoyable. Though they were more valuable due to them just giving more stuff, you would tend to look at a mega box as a method of progression, meanwhile you look at a Starr Drop like a fun reward. And I do know that the Starr Drops can be quite useful for progression, however you always have the Starr Road to fall back on, meanwhile with boxes that wasn't a thing. Opening a box and getting bad rewards was a much worse feeling than opening a Starr Drop and getting a bad reward despite you technically getting more from that bad Brawl box. But on the other hand, opening a good box gives you a similar feeling to getting a legendary Starr Drop. This really shows the significance of these things and how Starr Drops just overall give a better feeling despite not always giving the best of rewards. This is because people just expect a lot more from the Brawl boxes due to them having been a big part of the progression, so when the boxes don't meet expectations, it can be a bit more disappointing as it plays a big role in your progression. But outside of these expectations and progression as a whole, another thing that makes the Starr Drops better is just the fact that you open more of them when compared to how it was when the boxes were in the game. Now, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are just more opportunities for you to open a Starr Drop when compared to a Brawl box, and that just feels better in my opinion. This gives a more steady stream of rewards, and it does provide instant gratification since you open the drops as soon as you get them. However, that can also be a negative. One thing that many players like to do was to actually stack boxes, and this was good for two main reasons. First of all, it would just be nice to open a bunch of boxes at once, as that would be more satisfying as you just got a bunch of rewards at one time, and it was nice to look at all that loot at the end once you were done opening all the boxes. But the second reason would actually be for the people that already had all the brawlers unlocked. These players could just stack boxes until the next brawler was added into the game, and this would increase their chances of unlocking the brawler as they had a bunch of boxes they could open. So while this really only was for a small part of the player base, it still was a benefit and something that would make the boxes better than the drops. But anyways, there is another big factor that would still make the drops better than the boxes, and that is just with the whole opening experience. I really like to think of the drops as just eye candy, and that is a big thing that makes them better. They are just simply a lot better to look at when opening when compared to a Brawl box. One reason for this is because the drops are very interactive as you have to tap multiple times in order to open them, and this just builds excitement as you are also always hoping to receive an upgrade. And then you also do have just the colors and visual appearance with the drop being animated, and these bright colors just also do put you in a better mood, and it just makes the drops seem more fun when compared to the opening of the boxes, which just feels a lot more boring. There obviously is still an animation and everything, but the overall experience is less enjoyable in my opinion. Plus, the boxes are also just not as interactive as the drops, and most people just prefer to skip through them since they have seen the same thing a million times. There is the argument that there is a similar situation with the drops, however with them you never really know what to truly expect unless it is a predetermined drop, which is actually the next thing I want to talk about. As you know, the drops come in different rarities and it is random for the most part, however sometimes you receive a drop knowing exactly what rarity it is going to be. Now these are nowhere near as common as the normal drops, and these are typically only with the higher rarities since those are just more interesting. I mean, all the fun would be taken out if Supercell just gave predetermined rare drops, because that would just eliminate the hope that people had. But these guaranteed drops just act as a nice balance, and they also do feel special because they aren't as common and are higher rarities, meaning you can be excited for a good reward. But overall, the drops have just proven to be better than the boxes because they are more visually appealing, and the stakes also aren't as high with the drops despite you having the opportunity to get the best loot in the game, which would be a legendary brawler. But that's also it for this video. Let me know if you guys prefer the drops or the boxes down in the comments, since I think it'll be interesting to see the overall perception when you look at from a perspective other than just the average rewards. But with that said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.